The Writer's Retreat. Prologue. Mist clung to the steel-grey lake surrounding Blackwood Manor, as Eleanor guided her rental car along the narrow causeway. The imposing Victorian estate loomed ahead, its Gothic spires piercing the twilight sky. As a writer of psychological thrillers, Eleanor appreciated dramatic settings, but something about this one raised the fine hairs on her neck. She was the third to arrive for the Thornfield Prize, a prestigious competition offering not just a seven-figure publishing deal, but also the mentorship of reclusive publishing legend Maximilian Thornfield. 6 mystery writers, 1 week of intensive writing, and a final manuscript to be judged by the man who had shaped modern mystery fiction. The manor's great oak door swung open before she could knock. A tall, slender man in his 50s with swept-back silver hair and piercing blue eyes extended his hand. "Miss Chen, welcome to Blackwood. I'm Frederick, Mr. Thornfield's personal assistant. The others are gathering in the library." She followed Frederick through the manor's shadowed corridors, taking in the dark wood paneling and ancestral portraits that seemed to watch her passage. The library doors opened to reveal a cavernous room lined with books from floor to ceiling, illuminated by a massive crystal chandelier. For writers were already arranged around a large oak table, each with a portfolio before them. Frederick made the introductions. "You know James Blackwood, of course." The broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard nodded curtly. James was famous for his hard-boiled detective series, featuring a former intelligence officer turned private investigator. Books that balanced brutality with a rigid moral code. Diana Wells. A woman in her 60s with a cloud of white hair and grandmotherly appearance smiled warmly. Her cozy mysteries set in quaint English villages belied her razor-sharp mind. Marcus Reynolds. The young man with tortoiseshell glasses and nervous energy nodded several times. His debut locked-room mystery had taken the literary world by storm the previous year. And Olivia Winters. The statuesque woman with close-cropped black hair acknowledged Eleanor with cool assessment. Olivia's true crime narratives walk the line between journalism and voyeurism, often drawing criticism for their unflinching examination of real killers. "We're still waiting for." The library doors swung open, and a breathless woman in her 30s with wild auburn curls rushed in. "So sorry I'm late. The weather was dreadful, and I nearly missed the turn-off twice." She thrust out her hand to Frederick. "Zoe Morgan." Zoe was the wild card of the group. Her experimental mystery novels played with structure and narrative in ways that both delighted and confounded critics. Frederick nodded stiffly. "Now that you're all here, Mr. Thornfield asks that you review the competition materials. Dinner will be served at 8, when he will join you to discuss the particulars of the challenge." He distributed elegant leather folios to each writer, then departed with practiced silence. Eleanor opened her folio to find the competition guidelines. 7 days to produce the opening chapters of an original mystery novel. Daily writing time from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Accommodations in the manor's east wing, meals provided. The final page contained a handwritten note. "Your greatest fear will be your greatest inspiration." A shiver ran through her as distant thunder rolled across the lake. Chapter 1. 6 writers, 6 manuscripts. The dining room's oppressive grandeur matched the rest of Blackwood Manor. A long mahogany table that could seat 20, walls adorned with hunting trophies, and a stone fireplace large enough to roast an ox. The 6 writers sat clustered at one end, their host's chair at the head conspicuously empty. "Does anyone actually know what Thornfield looks like?" Zoe asked, fidgeting with her napkin. "I've never seen a photo." "He hasn't been photographed in decades," Marcus said. "Not since the scandal with his wife." "What scandal?" Eleanor asked. James leaned forward. She disappeared under mysterious circumstances 30 years ago. The investigation nearly destroyed him. The case was never solved, Olivia added with professional interest. I researched it for a book once, but couldn't get access to key records. Frederick entered bearing a silver tray with a decanter of red wine. Mr. Thornfield sends his apologies. He's been delayed by unexpected business, and will meet you all tomorrow evening instead. He asks that you begin your work in the morning as planned. Diana's eyes narrowed. That's rather disappointing. We've all come a long way. Mr. Thornfield is a busy man with many obligations, Frederick replied, pouring wine into crystal glasses. The manor has been prepared for your needs. Each of you has a private study in the east wing adjacent to your bedrooms. Breakfast will be served at 7. After a sumptuous but silent dinner, they retired to a parlour where conversation gradually thawed over brandy and coffee. What's everyone writing about? Zoe asked brightly. Eleanor smiled politely. I think we're meant to keep that to ourselves, aren't we? Oh, come on, Zoe persisted. Not the details, just the general concept. Marcus cleared his throat. I'm exploring a murder at a university. A professor of semiotics killed in a way that references his own work. Mine involves a poisoning at a corporate retreat, James offered gruffly. CEOs dropping like flies. I'm writing about a strangling in a knitting circle, Diana said with a disarming smile. The weapon is a handcrafted scarf. Mine centers on drowning, Olivia said. A swimming champion found at the bottom of a pool with weights tied to her ankles. Zoe bounced in her seat. I'm doing something with mirrors. A woman trapped in a house where every reflection shows a slightly different reality, and then her reflection disappears entirely. They all turned to Eleanor, who hesitated before saying, a staged suicide, made to look self-inflicted, but meticulously arranged by someone close to the victim. Thunder cracked directly overhead, and the lights flickered momentarily. Perfect atmosphere for murder, Diana chuckled. Later that night, Eleanor sat at the antique desk in her bedroom, reviewing her notes. Her protagonist was Dr. Lydia Park, a forensic psychiatrist who realizes her patient's confession masks a deeper truth. The opening scene featured a suicide staged to implicate an innocent man. Rain lashed against the windows as she typed, losing herself in the flow of creation. When she finally looked up, it was past midnight. As she prepared for bed, a soft thud from the hallway caught her attention. Opening her door a crack, she glimpsed a shadow moving down the corridor. Curious, she slipped into the hallway in time to see a figure disappear around the corner. Eleanor followed cautiously to a part of the manor she hadn't seen before. The corridor ended at a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. Beyond it, a narrow staircase spiraled upward. Heart pounding, she climbed the stairs to emerge in a circular room at the top of one of the manor's towers. Moonlight streamed through a domed glass ceiling, illuminating walls lined with filing cabinets and a massive desk covered with papers. She approached carefully, scanning the documents, manuscript pages, notes, and what appeared to be copies of their competition entries. Someone had been reviewing their work in progress. A leather-bound journal lay open on the desk. Eleanor hesitated, then flipped through it. Inside were detailed notes on each writer, their strengths, weaknesses, previous works, and personal histories, some dating back years. Beside her own name was written, potential, psychological insight strong. Too hesitant with the knife. The floorboard creaked behind her. Finding anything interesting, Miss Chin? She whirled to find Frederick in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the darkness. I'm sorry, she stammered. I saw someone coming this way and... Curiosity is natural for a writer, he said smoothly. But Mr. Thornfield values his privacy. These are his private notes for the competition. Of course. I apologize for intruding. As Frederick escorted her back to her room, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that there had been another presence in that tower room, something Frederick was protecting. Chapter 2, First Blood. Morning brought torrential rain that transformed the lake into a churning grey mass, effectively cutting off Blackwood Manor from the mainland. The writers gathered in the dining room, where Frederick informed them that phone lines were down and the wireless internet was disrupted by the storm. Mr. Thornfield anticipated such possibilities, he said, unperturbed. The competition will continue as planned. The isolation may even enhance your creativity. They dispersed to their individual studies, each unsettled by the enforced seclusion. Eleanor's room overlooked the rear gardens, now half submerged in water. She spent the morning developing her opening chapter, describing Lydia Park's growing realization that her patient's suicide note contained a coded message. At lunch, the group compared progress, careful to avoid specific details. Only Marcus seemed truly agitated. "Has anyone been in my study?" he asked, eyes darting between them. "Why would anyone go in there?" James asked. "Someone's been reading my manuscript," Marcus insisted. Things were moved. "Perhaps the housekeeping staff?" Diana suggested. "No, it's more than that. There were marks on the pages." "Notes? What kind of notes?" Eleanor asked. Marcus hesitated. "Suggestions. Corrections. As if someone was editing my work." "That's invasive," Zoe said, wide-eyed. "Did you ask Frederick?" "He claims the staff have strict instructions never to touch our work." They returned to writing with Marcus's concerns hanging in the air. Eleanor found herself repeatedly checking over her shoulder as she worked, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. At dinner, Frederick announced that Mr. Thornfield would join them the following evening, weather permitting. The group had just finished their main course when a piercing scream echoed through the manor. They rushed toward the sound, finding Zoe outside Marcus's bedroom, her face ashen. "It's Marcus," she gasped. He's. Eleanor pushed past her into the room and froze. Marcus lay on the floor, his body contorted unnaturally, face locked in a grimace of pain. A bottle of wine lay shattered beside him, dark liquid pooling like blood on the hardwood floor. Olivia checked his pulse with practiced efficiency. "He's dead." Frederick appeared in the doorway. "What's happened?" "He appears to have been poisoned," Olivia said clinically. "We need to call the police." "The lines are still down," Frederick reminded them. "And the causeway is flooded. I'll take the emergency boat at first light." "That's 12 hours away," Zoe cried. "We should examine the scene," James said, slipping into the role of his own detective character, "and secure the body." As the others discussed what to do, Eleanor moved to Marcus's desk where his manuscript lay open. The scene described a professor discovering his poisoned wine too late, his body contorting as neurotoxins shut down his system. "Everyone," she said quietly, "you need to see this." They gathered around the manuscript, the implications settling over them like a shroud. "It's exactly like his novel," Diana whispered. "Someone's replicated the murder from his book," James said grimly. Frederick cleared his throat. "I suggest you all return to your rooms while I handle the body. We'll contact authorities as soon as possible." "We're not splitting up," Olivia declared. "Not when one of us might be a killer." They relocated to the library, none willing to be alone. As Frederick departed to make arrangements, the remaining writers stared at each other with newfound suspicion. "One of us did this," James stated flatly. "Or Frederick," Zoe suggested. "Or this mysterious Thornfield we've never actually seen." "Whoever it is knew exactly what Marcus was writing," Eleanor said. "His manuscript described the same poisoning method." Diana's usual grandmotherly demeanor had hardened. We should check our own manuscripts. If the killer is using our stories as blueprints. They agreed to retrieve their work. Eleanor volunteered to go with Olivia, unwilling to let anyone wander alone. As they entered Olivia's study, Eleanor noticed how meticulously organized her research was. Crime scene photos, interview transcripts, and newspaper clippings arranged by category. "You're very thorough," Eleanor commented. "True crime requires precision," Olivia replied, gathering her manuscript. "People's lives are at stake." Back in the library, they compared notes. Each had been developing their mysteries opening murder. James's corporate poisoning, Diana's strangling, Olivia's drowning, Zoe's disappearance, and Eleanor's staged suicide. "If the killer is following our plots, we're each at risk in different ways," James concluded. "Or perhaps just our protagonists," Diana suggested. Marcus was writing about a professor. He fit his own victim profile. A chilling thought struck Eleanor. What if we're not just writers in this competition? What if we're characters in someone else's story? Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the library for one stark moment before plunging them back into the muted glow of the fireplace. Chapter 3: Reflections and Refractions. They spent a restless night in the library, taking turns keeping watch. By morning, the storm had intensified, making Frederick's promise of seeking help seem increasingly hollow. "We need to search the manor," James announced over a breakfast none of them touched. "Find any evidence of who did this." "We should start with Thornfield's quarters," Olivia suggested. "If he even exists." They split into pairs. James and Diana would search the west wing, Olivia and Zoe the ground floor, while Eleanor volunteered to return to the tower room she'd discovered. "I'm coming with you," Frederick announced, appearing suddenly in the doorway. "Mr. Thornfield's private study is not to be disturbed." "One of us is dead," Eleanor countered. "I think that overrides privacy concerns." Frederick's jaw tightened. "Nevertheless, I insist on accompanying you." As they climbed the tower stairs, Eleanor noticed Frederick's labored breathing and the slight tremor in his hands. "You seem upset," she observed. "Were you close to Marcus?" "I am concerned for all Mr. Thornfield's guests," he replied stiffly. The tower room appeared unchanged, moonlight replaced by the grey pallor of storm clouds through the glass dome. Frederick stood by the door as Eleanor examined the desk more carefully in daylight. The journal she'd seen was gone, but scattered notes remained. One page caught her eye, a table with their names and what appeared to be scoring criteria: originality, technical execution, psychological depth, and disturbingly, commitment to authenticity. "What does this mean?" she asked, holding up the page. "Commitment to authenticity. Mr. Thornfield values similarity to the truth in writing," Frederick answered. "The willingness to fully inhabit one's subject. Even murder?" Frederick's expression remained impassive. "Art requires sacrifice." A crash from below interrupted them. They rushed downstairs to find Zoe standing over shards of a broken mirror in the conservatory. "I saw something," she insisted, her voice trembling. "A face that wasn't mine." "What happened to Olivia?" Eleanor asked, noticing her absence. "We split up to cover more ground." She was checking the kitchen. They found Olivia in the manor's industrial kitchen, methodically going through cabinets. "No sign of the poison used on Marcus," she reported. "But I found something else." She led them to a hidden door behind the pantry, revealing a narrow corridor that connected to the east wing where their rooms were located. "Service passages," Frederick explained. "Common in houses this age. Convenient for someone who wanted to access our rooms unseen," James noted, rejoining them with Diana. "We found something too," Diana said. "In the West Wing drawing room. A portrait has been slashed, Thornfield's wife, according to the nameplate. They followed her back to a formal drawing room where a large painting hung above the fireplace, its center violently destroyed, leaving only the peripheral details of a woman in a blue dress intact. "Recent damage," James observed, touching the frayed canvas. "The edges are still sharp." Eleanor felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck. "Does anyone else feel like we're being maneuvered through someone else's mystery novel?" "Like laboratory rats," Olivia agreed. "Or characters," Zoe whispered. Frederick cleared his throat. "I suggest you all continue your writing assignments. Mr. Thornfield will expect progress despite these disruptions." "A man is dead," Zoe exclaimed. "And the competition continues," Frederick replied coldly. "Those who wish to withdraw may do so when weather permits." None of them returned to their studies. Instead, they gathered in the library to compare their findings. "What do we actually know about Thornfield?" James asked. "Beyond the publishing reputation. Reclusive genius. Haven't seen him. Wife disappeared." Zoe counted off on her fingers. "The scandal was hushed up," Olivia added. "But industry rumors suggested she was writing a tell-all about their marriage before she vanished." Eleanor frowned. "What if she never left? What if she's still somewhere in this house? After 30 years? Diana looked skeptical. "Or what if Thornfield himself is behind this?" Eleanor pressed. "Using our manuscripts to create his own perfect mystery?" As evening approached, Frederick announced that dinner would be served in the formal dining room, and that Mr. Thornfield would finally join them. They dressed with reluctance, tension building as they assembled in the opulent space. Crystal glasses gleamed in the candlelight, and place cards marked their positions around the massive table. At precisely 8 o'clock, the doors swung open. Frederick entered first, followed by a tall figure with a shock of white hair and aristocratic features. "My apologies for the delay," Maximilian Thornfield said, his voice a mellifluous baritone. "I understand there's been an unfortunate incident." The casual reference to Marcus's death sent a chill through the room. "Murder is more than an incident," James growled. Thornfield took his seat at the head of the table. "Indeed. Most unfortunate. Frederick informs me the authorities will be notified as soon as weather permits." "You don't seem particularly concerned," Olivia observed. "On the contrary, I'm fascinated by how this tragedy will influence your work. Real murder in a house full of mystery writers. It's almost poetic." Eleanor studied him carefully. "You knew our writing topics before we arrived, didn't you? The notes in your study suggested as much." A thin smile crossed Thornfield's face. "I make it my business to understand the creative process of my potential protégés. Did you understand it well enough to recreate Marcus's murder scene?" Diana asked bluntly. Thornfield's eyes gleamed in the candlelight. "What an intriguing accusation. But consider, I've been absent until this evening." "Have you?" Eleanor challenged. "Or have you been watching us all along?" The first course arrived before Thornfield could answer. A blood-red beetroot soup that none of them touched except their host, who consumed it with apparent relish. "You fear poison now," he observed. "Good. A writer should understand fear intimately. It sharpens the senses, clarifies the mind." "Is that what this is?" Zoe asked. "Some twisted writing exercise?" "Everything is material," Thornfield replied enigmatically. "Even death." After an excruciating dinner, where only Thornfield ate, they returned to the library. Their host excused himself, claiming work to review, leaving them alone with their suspicions. "He's playing with us," James said once Thornfield was gone. "But is he the killer?" Diana wondered. Eleanor wasn't convinced. "There's something else happening here. The staged quality of everything. It's like we're inside someone's manuscript." They agreed to stand guard in shifts through the night. Eleanor took the first watch while the others tried to rest. As midnight approached, she noticed Zoe growing increasingly agitated. "What's wrong?" Eleanor asked. "I keep seeing things in the mirrors," Zoe whispered. Faces that shouldn't be there. Just glimpses, but… like in your manuscript? Zoe nodded frantically. It's like my story is coming alive around me. We need to find all your manuscript pages, Eleanor said suddenly. All of our pages. If the killer is using our work as a template. A scream cut through the manor, high-pitched and abruptly silenced. Chapter 4. Through the Looking Glass. They raced toward the sound, finding themselves in the east wing where their bedrooms were located. Zoe's door stood ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. James entered first, then stopped so abruptly that the others collided with him. Inside, the room appeared empty, but the wall-length mirror had been shattered, fragments of glass scattered across the floor. Zoe's manuscript pages were arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the destruction. Zoe, Diana called. No answer came. She was just with us, Eleanor said, confusion mounting. How did she get here so quickly? Olivia pointed to a smear of red on one of the larger mirror fragments. Blood. They searched the room, finding no sign of Zoe beyond the blood-smeared glass. The adjacent bathroom was empty, the window securely locked from the inside. It's exactly like her manuscript, Eleanor realized. A woman who disappears when her reflection goes missing. James examined the mirror frame. There must be a hidden passage. No one vanishes into thin air. Despite a thorough inspection, they found no secret doors, no explanation for Zoe's impossible disappearance. Frederick appeared in the doorway. What's happened? Zoe's missing, Diana explained. We heard a scream and found this. His eyes swept over the broken mirror and manuscript pages. I'll inform Mr. Thornfield immediately. We don't need Thornfield, James snapped. We need the police. As I've explained, the storm. Convenient storm, Olivia interrupted. Keeping us isolated just long enough for two of us to be eliminated. Frederick's expression hardened. I suggest you return to the library while I search the grounds. It's possible Ms. Morgan simply wandered off. None of them believed this, but they retreated to their makeshift sanctuary, more certain than ever that they were being hunted. We need weapons, James declared, pacing before the fireplace. Diana produced a small pistol from her handbag. I came prepared. The others stared at her in shock. I'm a 70-year-old woman who writes about murder, she said matter-of-factly. I don't take chances. Is it loaded? Olivia asked. With enough bullets for everyone in this house, including our mysterious host. Eleanor felt a strange clarity descending. We're approaching this wrong. We're reacting instead of anticipating. What do you mean? James asked. If the killer is using our manuscripts as a blueprint, we need to review the remaining murder scenarios: drowning, strangling, poison, and staged suicide. Figure out who's most at risk for each. Now we can finish properly, Charlotte said, training the gun on Eleanor. The protagonist faces death, realizes the killer was hiding in plain sight all along. Frederick stepped between them. Charlotte, no. For a moment, she hesitated, something like recognition flashing in her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by cold determination. You're ruining the ending, Frederick. The gunshot echoed through the manor, followed by absolute silence. Frederick staggered, a crimson stain spreading across his shirt. He reached toward his sister with confusion and betrayal in his eyes before collapsing to the floor. Charlotte stared at the gun in her hand, as if seeing it for the first time. That wasn't in the manuscript. Eleanor moved slowly toward her. Charlotte, give me the gun. The story's wrong now, Charlotte whispered. It's all wrong. Outside, lights swept across the windows as sirens wailed in the distance. The police, James said. The storm must have cleared. Charlotte laughed bitterly. The cavalry arrives at the final act. How conventional. She turned the gun toward herself. Perhaps this is the proper ending after all. The tormented artist, consumed by her greatest creation. Eleanor lunged forward, wrestling for the weapon. It discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as they struggled. James and Olivia joined the effort, subduing Charlotte as her composure shattered completely. "You've ruined it," she screamed. "The perfect manuscript ruined." As the police stormed into Blackwood Manor, Eleanor sat amidst the scattered manuscript pages, both Charlotte's and her own. Two mysteries intertwined, one fictional, one horrifyingly real. 6 months later, Eleanor sat in her publisher's office, pushing the final draft of her novel across the desk. "It's not what we expected," her editor admitted after reading the summary. "A writer who solves murders is familiar territory, but one who gets trapped in someone else's manuscript. I needed to write it this way," Eleanor said simply. After the events at Blackwood Manor, the survivors had pieced together the full story. Charlotte Thornfield, once a promising writer overshadowed by her famous husband, had suffered a mental breakdown after Maximilian criticized her work as inauthentic. She had staged her own disappearance with Frederick's help, then gradually constructed an elaborate delusion where she could transform real writers into characters in her magnum opus. The previous competitions had been covered up by Frederick, who protected his sister while maintaining the illusion that Maximilian was still alive. The real Thornfield's body was discovered buried in the manor's garden, preserved by the same techniques Charlotte had described in one of her unpublished manuscripts. "The reviews of your account of what happened have been extraordinary," her editor noted. "People can't believe it's non-fiction. The line between fiction and reality isn't as clear as we pretend," Eleanor replied. "That's what Charlotte understood, in her twisted way. We all create stories to make sense of our lives." The editor tapped the manuscript. "And this fictional version, with elements from all your fellow survivors' work woven in, it's your way of processing?" "It's my way of finishing what we started," Eleanor corrected. "A collaboration none of us wanted, but all of us contributed to." Diana had returned to her cozy mysteries, now with a sharper edge that critics had praised as revelatory. James had taken a sabbatical from writing, working instead with law enforcement on cold cases. Olivia had published a meticulous true crime account of Charlotte Thornfield's decades-long delusion, careful to honor the victims rather than sensationalize the killer. And Zoe, the real Zoe Morgan, had been found locked in a hidden room beneath the manor, replaced by Charlotte days before the competition began. She was still recovering, still struggling to separate reality from the nightmare she'd endured. As for Frederick, he had survived to stand trial as an accomplice, his testimony revealing the full extent of Charlotte's elaborate fiction and his own complicity in maintaining it. "What are you calling it?" the editor asked, indicating the manuscript. Eleanor had considered many titles over the months of writing, but only one captured the essence of what had happened at Blackwood Manor: the dangerous power of stories and the fine line between creating fiction and being consumed by it. "The Writer's Retreat," she said. "Sometimes the most frightening stories are the ones we tell ourselves."